Investigators say an inmate managed to get a gun inside Smith State Prison and then killed the kitchen staffer before turning the gun on himself. Tonight, investigators say they believe the inmate and victim had a relationship.
Black men, you gotta stay away from them. You gotta social distance away from them. Now, did you hear that right there? It said the victim and the perpetrator had a relationship. So let's get into this. Now, to go straight into it, both of the people involved are black. Jaydrekus Hart, aka Jmoney, was in a relationship with an Aramark food service worker who worked in the prison, and her name was Aureon Grace. Now, Aureon Grace, what struck me about this is she was a pretty woman, and she looks like a nice lady, the kind of woman that a working class black man would see in a grocery store and would want to open up a conversation with and start talking to. But little do you know, that would have been a big mistake, because you have no idea that that sweet face is connected to such crazy evil. So here's what was happening, right? Let's just cut straight to the chase. She's working this job. The mother said she was working 11 days straight, 14 days straight. She had 2 kids, a 1-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. So, the media would push, wow, what a hardworking single mom. But we black men know that that's not the full story. And at her work, whatever she was doing, she had plenty of time, apparently, to start a relationship with this convicted inmate. Now, I don't know why they call it a relationship, because to me, a relationship includes taking someone out on dates, deep conversations, of course, sex, paying for things. This guy is in prison. So where do you think he's taking her on to dates? The yard? Is he taking her out to the yard to lift weights with him? He was taking her to Pound Town. That was the extent of their relationship. And she was definitely giving him money, because prisoners make like $5 a week if they have a job in prison. So he was making no money, basically, ironically called Jmoney, but he was making no money in prison. And this dude was in prison for some vile stuff. See, Jaydrekus Hart, he was in prison and he was facing another 20 years in state prison for voluntary manslaughter. Now, if you don't know what voluntary manslaughter means, it's kind of like the opposite of involuntary manslaughter. In involuntary manslaughter, you're usually somebody who's driving drunk and they accidentally send someone to the upper room. Voluntary manslaughter is when you go out of your way to commit a crime, usually a violent crime, at pew-pew point, and the victim fights back. And you, being the scumbag you are, you end the victim's life. And that's what he did. So he was doing 20 years. Now, Aureon Grace was 24 years old, and she had just begun that year at that new job. So she wasn't there for a long time, and she finally broke at like 40. She was 24 years old. It was her first year, and she immediately was starting to let this guy clap the cheeks. Now, you know full well that a pretty woman like her had plenty of men to choose from on the outside. And she was a mom of 2 kids in a time of extreme inflation. So you would have thought that she would want to get a regular 9-to-5 guy who could, pay the bills, take her out. But instead of that, she didn't want a guy like that. Anyway, so whatever the case may be, she's dating this dude, really just getting taken to Pound Town. And for whatever happens, there's trouble in paradise. Now, we productive working class black men would consider that hell, not paradise. But for whatever reason, that relationship started to unwind. And what I think happened is one of 2 things. One, I'm thinking that she started to feel the pressure of paying for a man. Remember, she has to pay for this man. And I guarantee he's increasingly asking and demanding her to do more and more things for him. Or, like we already know, they like to get down with multiple dudes at the same time. Maybe she was talking to multiple prisoners, which you're going to see might be later in this story. Stick to the end. But for whatever reason, this man she thought she could control. At 4:30 a.m. on a Sunday, June 16th, 2024, Aureon Grace was pew-pewed to the upper room while working her shift in the prison kitchen. Jaydrekus Hart fatally hawk-toed her 3 times. And the victim, Miss Grace, was pronounced unalived at the scene of the crime. Then Jaydrekus, being the pookie that he is, with a release date of June 2043, he decided to release himself early, pointed the pew-pew at himself, and turned off his TV. Now, you know, guys, that I'm going to dig deeper than the news is going to report. And this is coming from the inmates. When Jaydrekus aimed the pew-pew at her, her last words to him were, and I quote, "But I have children." Jaydrekus, Jmoney, when he approached her, and you just know she uttered those words with absolute terror, tears in her eyes, pleading, "But I have children." He pew-pewed her once in the head. You think that would be enough. Then he stood over her, and then he pew-pewed 2 more into her. This is the kind of scumbag she decided to risk her job to lay down with. Not to mention the kids. And when I say she invited this dude into her network, into her family, you're going to see just how connected these inmates were with her family. Yeah, that's right, inmates. Because guess how we know these final words?
The GDC says an inmate used a contraband cell phone to call a family member of Aureon Grace shortly after she was killed.
You see, before the officials at Georgia State Prison of Corrections were able to call the family and let them know the horrible news, inmates, multiple inmates, had already called the family and let them know exactly what happened. And I got one more clip because the mother has some words. And when you see the mother, black men, stay away from them, social distance away from them, you're immediately going to understand exactly how this situation came to be.
Tonight, we're hearing from the mother of Aureon Grace, the 24-year-old who was shot and killed inside of Smith State Prison in Glenville.
She was a sister. She was a daughter. She was a mother. She was loved.
Aureon Grace leaving behind a large family, including a 1-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. Her mother, Deshonda Hagan, says,
just take a look at the heavily tattooed woman. Neck tattoos all over, chest tattoos. But this woman grew up listening to this matriarch who programmed her idea of what a man should look like, act like, and be like. Black men, do you think this is a kind of woman that likes working class black men, that was bringing around a working class black man around her kids when the victim Aureon was growing up? Or do you think that the victim unfortunately had to watch Pookie and Ray Ray and Gloctavius and Quantavius go through her house day in and day out? And baby, that's why when she became a 24-year-old, she decided, yeah, he's in here for what? 20 years for sending someone to the upper room? Yeah, this is the kind of guy I want. You can't argue with them. You can't tell them nothing. You can't convince them. Black men, you just have to social distance away from them.
in the wake of her death, Hagan says she and her family are left looking for answers.
My child is dead, and it's no explanation for a firearm to be inside of a prison.
What does she mean there's no explanation? They're criminals. They don't follow the law. Enough of this. You got to social distance away from them because of two reasons. First, and most importantly, their networks, meaning the people they're connected to that will connect themselves to you, if you're dumb enough to get socially connected with them, those networks are full of poisoned men, because they are attracted to terrible men. Black men have been saying this for a while, okay? But this is the way it really works. They're attracted to pookies first and foremost. Criminals, people who have sent others to the upper room, face tests, incarcerated over and over. That's what they like. And if they can't get that guy, they want to become a divester. After they're done with Pookie and they got 3 to 5 kids, they've been abused, they've gone through all of that, and they're tired of that for a while. They're all hurt and beat up. They want to go divest to a white man. And the kind of white men that they can get are usually the worst kind of white dudes out there because they can't get the good ones. Okay, white women get the best white men. They get what's left. They get what's left after white women get them, Hispanic women get them, Asian women get them, and whatever is left. Usually some guy that is a criminal, just like the old Pookie, that's what they try to get. And with that, or some old man, like a 90-year-old, 80-year-old old man that they think they're going to get some money from, and they're not. We got so many stories. And only then, after they are washed and ruined, usually late 30s, mid 40s, then they'll do the reach back to a working class black man, hoping you're going to save them and fix their messed up life. And a lot of the guys that they divest to are deeply anti-black because they hate black people so much. The black women, they don't like themselves for being black and they hate black men. So the white men that they get around or whoever they're divesting to, they usually bond with them over their united hatred of black men. So by the time they do the reach back, all the men in their network are terrible. They're just terrible dudes you do not want to know. Dangerous people to know. The other reason is that black women are embarrassed to be seen with working class black men. Their greatest nightmare is ending up in a stable relationship with a 9-to-5 black man. And the reason for this is a large amount of black women in this country, they really don't like being black women. They got some sort of psychological issue. But black men like being black men. And they hate that we are not unhappy. And they hate that we like being what we are. And because of that, they hate reality itself. Reality becomes their enemy because they want to live in fantasy land. Because they feel like they got to live in this ridiculous fantasy to make up for being what they are, which are black women. And getting with a working class black man means that fantasy that they have in their head is over. It doesn't matter if we're hyper attracted to black women in this country. What matters is as long as we want to stay good men, productive men, working class men, we have to abandon them socially. We got to social distance away from them. That means literally putting in distance from us in social situations. Anyway, guys, take care and hit that like button. Let me know what you think in the comments.